don't make any money.
That's a good question.
You got a good question over here.
Do you like the farm? Yeah.
Far out. You like the farm? Okay, let's see. What do we got over here? Is it your turn for a question?
Me?
The farm basically was like this magic place that we went to from school. We'd walk over.
I miss the farm because many a time.
And who knows, you know, if any of my friends ever become rock stars, we will start a new farm. I'm ready for those goats and chickens and ducks.
That's what the farm was like. It was this little spot of nature, this little eruption of nature in the middle of the concrete jungle, proving that life could still...
The farm, personally, was a very magical place.
And the farm was this beautiful warehouse with corrugated roof, freezing in the winter.
One of the beautiful things about the farm is that it really had diversity. You know,
If sometime I could get enough money and I could get enough people with commitment, I would open another place like the farm. Sure, I would like to do it. Sure, I would like to give something like that. But are the funding agencies, are the foundations, or the corporations, or are they hip enough to do it? The people that run these places, do they have the heart or the vision, or do they sympathize? Because they didn't fit into a category. Oh, this is a community center.
They say you're going to put us on TV.
Well, that's what that is. It's a TV. Yeah. Have you ever been to the farm? What did you do at the farm?
Play with the rabbits.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
After school, on the weekends, whenever, we would just end up there.
Asking the sheriff is to hold off the eviction until one of two things could happen. One, that
everything seemed possible. It seemed possible to recreate society, and a new society in the shell of the old. That was really what it was about.
You don't usually see farms in a city.
And if the farm is evicted, we face the prospect of being without a rehearsal space and without a winter home, which is extremely grim.
Is that strawberry cocoa? The one that tickles you when you're pink? I just want to say that we like the farm a lot and the animals.
voiced their concern about the fact that it's going to take us more than 5 days to find homes for 60 animals.
The farm represented a great alternative, independence. We didn't know how much the farm was going to have to deal with the city in the future. But the idea was that it was a spontaneous, grassroots, independent, autonomous, collective organization that created itself.
Yeah, I came first to the farm about 1974 when it began. There were only two people who were really involved in it, Jack Wickert and Bonnie Shirk.
Bonnie lived up the street, and As a kid, I used to live up the street the other way and would play under these buildings at nighttime.
One night after work, I waited for Bonnie, and together about 4 o'clock in the morning, we went down to these buildings that were nestled alongside the freeway, and indeed, they were all empty with a big available signs on them. So we thought, well, okay, let's tear up the concrete and put in a farm at that time, because there hadn't been anything else happening with the space. It was a great way to put in a model farm that would be a whole environmental program for the neighborhood kids and the city as a whole. So we started pursuing that. Bonnie was going to New York to do a conceptual piece, and I was on my way to Mexico City to do a theater festival. And we exchanged across the continent messages via intermediary in San Francisco, and said, okay, well, let's do it, or we'll give it a go. There was
anyway, you were in Mexico, and I got a call from Bonnie, who was somewhere else, and she said, get a message to Jack that we're going to do it. So I got the message to you that you were going to do it. You came back, you quit the mime troupe, and the next thing I remember is that Bonnie was planting cows on the freeway. That symbolized for me the image that the farm created of life growing in the middle of concrete. You know, that's what the farm was like. It was this little spot of nature, this little eruption of nature in the middle of the concrete jungle, proving that life could still exist there.
The freeway had just been completed. There was nothing growing out there. The ground was sterile. It was very ugly. The whole place was very ugly. And Jack and Bonnie recruited a lot of their friends who were artists, performers, theater people, and started to find a way to use that art to transform these environments. They moved into the buildings here, using these places as gathering environments to bring people in, to bring the community in, bring other artists in, and to use art as a magnet for that kind of activity.
San Francisco has a farm.
And the farm won't leave town without a fight.
Artists and neighborhood community organizers organized and demanded, you know, not a penny for a downtown cultural palace until we have neighborhood cultural centers.
Scooby-Doo.
Is everyone in agreement that strategy is the thing that should be developed right at this time? Strategy for Thursday night and strategy for the future.
That was the music of the farm, though, right?
So one day I rode my bike down to the farm, and I was just astounded by the place, what was going on there. It's a beautiful location. There were these wonderful gardens taking shape, and I just started volunteering down at the farm.
What brought me there first was the gardening, and the back area was really quite barren the first time I laid eyes on it. So I came to help Jeff remove rocks and try and get that pitiful soil fertile.
The garden out in what was to become the park had just started. There was kind of there was a grand vision of it being a mandala type of a motif, a central bed, with the other beds out around it, and just ending up with this big vegetable garden. And that was in the corner lot adjacent to the farm. You know, we just had this premise where you take what's available and you work with it. You know, whether it's these people from Laos who are learning English as a second language, or the Project 20 people who are working off their parking tickets, or the neighborhood youth, you work with them. You know, you take what's there and you make something happen.
Well, after I retired, I just taking walks for exercise, and I just walked by here over there one day, and Jeff was working out here, and I come down and started talking to her. And I found out that most of them that's gardening out here didn't know even how to start, much less finish.
There was all these people in our community that had a lot to offer, and they weren't necessarily all PhDs or teachers even or anything. And, you know, Tommy's definitely one of them, and his insight into growing things and plants. And Jeff and, you know, Patricia and other people who were really good at what they did. You know, everyone shared information.
No, I was raised in the country on a farm. We raised everything need to eat, because then, you know, the little country stores, they didn't, most of their stuff, you know, was dry and canned stuff.
The farm didn't have fences. We had one occasionally barking dog. The place was essentially wide open, 24 hours, the gardens at least. And these kids would drop in whenever they felt like it. A lot of them would drop in after we had gone home for the day, and invariably would create havoc in the gardens. There'd be bicycle tracks through the newly planted carrot beds, and all the bean poles would get knocked down, and you know, the kids were just being somewhat malicious. But little by little, we drew them in, and we got them to plant the carrots, we got them to stake the beans, we got them to harvest the potatoes or the corn and the strawberries and whatnot. And little by little, they came to appreciate the gardens. They had a hand in it. There was another aspect of the garden, which was just people from the community coming down and starting a plot, growing some vegetables, getting it to work with the barn, you know, manure from here, vegetable scraps there, bugs, all this stuff. That was only one of the gardens that the farm had out in the park. We also had a garden on the other side of the building, right underneath the freeways. There was quite a bit going on out there. We had fruit trees and compost bins and raspberries and whatnot. And then even out in the middle of the interchange, we had yet another garden with herbs and flowers and fruit trees.
We got a lot of different nationalities here. Some of them bring in vegetables that I never even heard of. Oh, yeah? Yeah, different nationalities eat different things.
There's something about farming that's multicultural.
Australian spinach. It don't even look like our spinach, but it tastes good.
So you should all come down here and have a garden plot.
And while I was working at the farm at the time, we were trying to make the park happen. And so the children, one of the things the children would do would be to go out to this huge asphalt area and make designs of their imaginary parks and what they wanted to see. And I used to tell the children, look at this, because someday it's going to be a park and it's going to be very hard to remember what it used to be.
It was originated here, and it was signed by about 1,800 people. And the statement that the petition says is, we want the city of San Francisco to acquire the 5.5 acres of open space at Army and Potrero, and we want to participate in transforming the cement plaza into an area which
But Prop J did pass, so there was an open space fund in 1977. It was the first site that got bought for a park in San Francisco.
We really organized to try and get the Parks Department to work with our method of operating, you know, to use the community to build this park. And the community garden was a big part of that park. I mean, there was an agreement that there would be a community garden there. So we felt very strongly it was unnecessary to destroy the existing community garden to create a community garden. We felt there was plenty there to work with.
It was just our hope that we would be able to save the garden and try to keep some control over it.
We dragged them into City Hall, and we got a restraining order to prevent them from destroying our garden.
You know, it's sort of the theme of all of these community groups is that if you don't own the thing, ultimately you're going to be displaced. And that happened in the park, and ultimately it happened with the farm itself.
There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of exhaustion, and we need each other. We need each other to make it happen.
It was the idea of creating independent institutions. It was the idea that such a thing could happen because people wanted to make it happen. And that the farm, there could be a farm with, actually a farm with animals in the middle of a freeway, and school kids could come down and play with piglets and ducks and duckies and chickies. It opened up a whole idea of life, you know, that life didn't have to be defined by the official institutions, that the way you lived didn't have to be defined by the government.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L,
you know, we were all city kids. I grew up in the Mission, and then here was a bunch of ducks and chickens and goats and rabbits. So you can imagine our whole class, the first time we went to the farm, wow, incredible, and we can feed them and touch them, and it was really, the farm basically was like this magic place that we went to from school.
And I was the head teacher of the farm's raw egg animal theater for a number of years. And I felt that the program that we did was fantastic. And the first thing I guess I feel is very important is that my goal in the project was to give these children real life experiences and to expose them to as many things as possible. And what we would do is take classes from Buena Vista School, which at that point was a K through third grade school. And we would work with the children once a week for approximately an hour and a half. And it was a continuous program for a whole semester. So the children got lots of experiences. And one of the important things about the program, I feel, is that we had the whole use of the whole farm for our teaching space.
And not every child is encouraged by a classroom atmosphere where you're sitting in little seats and being told what to do. Whereas at the farm, we were able to run around and find our own things. There was never just one activity going on at the farm. You could always break off and find a chicken and sit in the corner and pet it if you felt like it, or taunt the geese, or perhaps go look at the flower that you planted 3 weeks ago. That was really important, that to be encouraged to learn in a sense that was, well, a different structure, form, where I could actually do rather than just hear.
Pineapple. Okay, let's swing around slowly around the room and watch who the question askers are. Here's another question asker over there.
Hey, which one?
We're going right around that one.
I was once told that if children could learn the life cycle of a plant and the life cycle of an animal, that's basically all they need to know in biology. And that was one thing that we could do at the farm that I loved, because there was chickens and there would be eggs, and then the eggs would come out of the chicken.
But don't drop it.
And the same thing with plants. So I could show them the whole life cycle of a plant. And it was just such an exciting, rich experience for the children.
Film me, film me, film me, film me, film me. I want to be filmed over here.
We had use of the big theater space. And one of the things that the children would do is we had a costume area. We'd dress up in costumes and do shows in there in this immense space that was wonderful.
Kate, the Western hat maker. You'll be very pleased to meet her. I hear she is very interesting. Kate, would you like to say something about making your hats?
Yes, I love making my own hats.
Through the 70s, it was possible to invent what you wanted to invent and to make what you wanted to make happen.
When you say all you have is an empty lot, you know, and you put some seeds into it and you water it, something comes out of it.
A woman named Ann Page came to our school once into the farm and took a few of us from our class and said, okay, we're going to make a movie. You guys come up with the story, come up with the name, everything. I'm just going to shoot it. And we did, and it was called Mazuka the Crazy Attack, and it was 3 girls who become women, go back in time. We're in this industrial lot, which is now La Raza Park, right? That big old lot that was next to the farm. And there was an old burned out VW bus, a little bug. And we put on all these wigs and old fancy dresses and climbed into the old car, and we were riding and just screaming and making up this story as we went along, improvising, and the whole time she's filming it, and it's this beautiful little strange movie. And okay, that's not so far from the art I'm making now. And
doing any funny wigs.
It forced us to rethink where we were going as artists and what we were going to be doing with our political consciousness with our desire to make dance, to make movement. How could we incorporate this environment? How could we speak to the city fathers, if you will, about the importance of art as a healing tool, art as something that saves lives. Art is a way to begin a constructive life.
The children got to see creative people working. That was one thing. Another thing is, and I feel that that's very exciting for the children to come in and see actual actors working and actual circus performers working. They got to learn real skills.
You know, role modeling is where it all starts. And, you know, a lot of times what you see is, you know, how you end up, you know, later in life. And
you know, there's also a sense of ownership I think kids get when they have, well, in this case it was Make a Circus and Bay City Reds and then Vaudeville Nouveau. When they're there, it's their place. It's not our place, right? It's how kids are anyway, but it's also their place. It was their goats, their chickens, their garden was there. And we were their pet circus. And that's, even though we didn't have to see it that way, they definitely said, of course we have people come juggle for us. Of course people come try out their new work for us. Of course the Jones family dances for us. That's the way life is.
Ladies and gentlemen, direct from Bologna, Italy, the men behind Mondo, Polo, help me welcome Fratelli Bologna!
I do things professionally now that I never would have had the confidence to even attempt had I not been encouraged as a child to try it my own way. I had art classes at the farm and things that I could not excel in as well as other people. But it taught me that perhaps art wasn't my genre, drawing, visual art, and perhaps growing that little piece of broccoli in the garden was the thing that I was good at. And it encouraged me to find that niche for myself, to be independent, to reach out and find art.
The art gallery really probably became my reason for circulating around the farm. And what got me started in that was because it was a gallery and it was there and was pretty much offered to me to do whatever I wanted to with it. That was a great place for me to exhibit my work. And that was something I really wanted to do at that point in my life. So
there's just no relationship to the way a pig or a chicken spends its day to the way a clown spends their day. It's just a different world, and it's very nice to sometimes check into the chicken world.
I'm a creative survivalist, and I think the farm helped shape my whole dictum, and that is that you take what is handed to you and you make it work for yourself. That's creative survival. And the farm was a part of it. Creative survival by any means necessary.
It really motivates me too. It makes me realize how important you know, strong role models are. Because even though she may not have realized it at that time, you know, she was someone that I did grow up to respect, you know, and the work she did. And then coming back to the city and seeing the stuff she was doing. And I work with children a lot now, and I always think, you know, wow, you know, I used to know Odessa when I was 8, and, you know, maybe some girl here is going to walk in someday and be more, you know, at the stage that I'm at now with Odessa, and it's inspiring.
But it all made sense at the farm. The farm was one of those early industrial, multi-purpose, multidisciplinary, multicultural spaces in San Francisco.
But the fact is that it could be stepped on, it could be taken away.
The thing is that the situation here lends itself to a political solution, not a legal solution.
I like it. I don't want it to close it down because I like the rabbits and chickens.
And when he went to the farm, he was so scared the animal was going to bite him. He started running home crying to his mommy.
That they were terrified of the people who came here. That they were terrified of the farm.
I mean, if I were in her situation, I would either say, I want a group that I feel really good about being there, or I want my money.
So it's a nonviolence prep in the morning, a planning meeting in the afternoon, and
the vigil will most likely start Wednesday
They said there was
morning.
some neighborhood opposition. There was actually 2 families.
There is a misunderstanding in the Latino community about the farm.
The group will hopefully have gained the momentum on this walk or on this journey to continue that planning process. But we'll also in the process, in this process, is all process oriented, discover the resources which exist. And tonight we've heard of resources from Samoan people, from Native American people, handicapped people, and others who are involved with the arts and the art resources
The
of this
concept of
area.
environmental art did not translate into the
The
Ronald Reagan
Republicans
years.
had taken over the administration. Our funding was disappearing. The landlord was turning into a major capitalist on us, you know?
Misrule, anarchy.
Jonah almost threatened to quit at that point because we weren't getting paid.
Shooting pool upstairs in what had been the art
Sometimes it
gallery.
was a challenge. Sometimes it was friendly. Sometimes it wasn't so friendly. Yeah, but those we had different sort of
Sometimes they had
opinions.
no use for white people, which is understandable considering the history of
We had
the United States. And
pageants, festivals, youth groups, outdoor shows.
They're all so strange,
powwows,
and they're running around, you know, tumbling over each other and playing with
See people with hair that sticks straight up and they get a little worried, but actually there hasn't been that much
If
of a
getting rid of the
problem.
rock concerts is the one thing they want to keep peace out there, would you get rid of them?
We are willing to negotiate with them, with the police, and with the neighbors, and that's basically why I'm here.
The variety of shows we did and just the level of shows that we did there were really unmatched, I would say, ever in this city.
The beauty of the farm was that I was able to book the shows that I would normally pay money to go and see.
Never cop, never fear, never army.
And I lived right behind the stage, as a matter of fact, for about a year. Each guitarist had a double stack with 100-watt. These posters were a reminder of the glory days that had gone by.
Never hate.
And then one day, Jack Wickert and this guy Rhodes, who were on the board of directors, they said, why don't you become director of the farm? Over $100,000 of federal money went into the farm to bring it up to code.
It's BGK, Balthasar Geroes Commando, from Amsterdam, Holland. Who's that?
And even when the punks were there, I remember going there and the toilets were broken. They were hanging this kid out the window and the police coming and all that, but I found it interesting.
And the other thing was, once we didn't have a lease, we couldn't go to a private foundation and say, well, give us, some kind of grant, because we couldn't even guarantee that we were going to be there for a month. We just had a month-to-month lease, so without a long-term lease, it really made our position to raise funds much harder.
First month I was there, we got our first eviction notice from this legal battle went on and on and on, and she wouldn't take our rent for October of '86 after moving in there in September, so.
We're just spreading words. We're not spreading lies. See the million minds, shoot to indifference.
It was 12 or 15 or 20 wills, going to battle. When you look back at it, it was like, okay, sure, me and Jack, we had some fucking serious fights, But I still talk to him, we're still friends. And
She was deep into the punk scene, and she would talk about the farm, and I assume we were talking about two different places, because she would talk about where she was going to go and get dancing and get crazy, and I'm thinking, well, the farm I know is the place you go and you play with the goats and the kids and you juggle, okay.
So we went through the permit process, which actually the police, by forcing us to get permits, really helped us a tremendous amount, because it did allow us to become legal, which meant that we could actually look at the place as a money-making venue.
Hey, so be sure to support your local farm.
But that was the big Exodus weekend with heathen and desecration, sacrilege, was the famous verbal abuse headlining where the guys were goose-stepping. Well, the biggest show I remember was the U-Men from Seattle with Tragic Mulatto and the Butthole Surfers.
You know, life's a struggle. We spoiled you. That's not the fuck is the matter with you. You're a fucking spoiled brat. I said, okay, I'm going back to California. So I'm back in California. And I wouldn't trade this place in for nothing. Huh.
That's what I wanted to talk about too, is that then later on when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, I started, you know, I got into the whole punk scene and I was back at the farm.
And really my primary motivation was the actual farm part of it. I mean, I felt like it was this beautiful thing with animals and gardens and beehives and everything that you know that city kids would never be exposed to normally.
There's kids that I see now, you know, that are like 16 years old kids, you know, that I knew when they were 10, you know. And I taught them about how, you know, about ducks or chickens and, and just even about sex and about, you know, about things that are, you know, you need to deal with in your life through this whole, like, you know, gardens and animals, and you could talk about it, you know, it was okay. You could talk about all of these things that were somehow like these taboo things in our culture, you know. And,
So, you know, it was a hard transition for me to come down there, you know, see that maybe the greenhouse hadn't been watered, or that the barn was really getting rank, or that nobody was interested in the vegetable garden, and they'd rather shoot pool during the day. Okay, now the pool table was there for
Another really out-of-control moment was a DI show, and I can't remember. This guy was getting drunk and belligerent, this DI Rhodian. She had come back in the farm because she was trying to escape the cops because the cops were looking for her.
Somehow we managed to never have an accident after any of those shows.
Ready on your left! Ready on your right! Ready on the firing lines!
the farm had this weird sort of magical thing. I mean, it was like impossible tasks became somehow possible.
I mean, my feeling about the whole thing really was that it was a miracle that it managed to keep going week after week, because there were a lot of forces against us.
I think the farm was the last venue for the punk.
They had to step on it because it existed and flourished outside all official channels. It was out of control.
So what they got is a sweet deal. They got all their rent paid for 12 years. They got maybe $200,000 worth of improvements. They got permits, which are worth maybe $100,000, $200,000. And what are they going to give you except the booth?
Is this a huge delay or a defeat for you?
Well, I don't think so. I'd much rather have a judgment on the merits than one that was by default.
Oh, so there'll be a trial?
Yes.
We're always happy to put before the people of this city the issue of whether or not a landlord in a commercial situation deals in good faith and whether or not there are any limitations upon which a landlord in a commercial situation can recover possession of real property. We feel that when a jury of San Franciscans hears this case, we'll come out ahead.
You too want a trial?
Yes, we do. We'd much rather have a trial than let them sneak a default in.
For the same reason that we loved it and that it represented life to us, they had to kill it, because it represented disorder, misrule, anarchy.
But basically my attitude was if somebody came in the door and they wanted to use the community space, I would try to figure out a way for them to do it.
I would come to the farm to talk to people of different backgrounds.
Well, it was the community center. It was the real community center. My neighbor died. His wife called me, 2 houses up. His wife called me and said, do you know the people at the farm? Because Bill died, and I want to have his memorial there.
And depending on what day you walked on the farm, some days it was like 200 kids running around, and then another days it'd be a wedding, another day would be people planting.
It was the room. It was the kitchen room. It was the farm. It was the farmhouse room with the fireplace and the stove, and the wooden floor that to me was the heart of the farm.
It was a kind of a place where you could sit down and break bread together and drink and eat and go out in the garden. Some people go out and smoke dope, and that was part. It was part of the. It was part of the consciousness. And they shared with the community, and they had a place to go. And they had a place for people to have wedding receptions and parties and birthdays and all that. I just don't see it.
A gathering place.
A gathering spot.
When we don't have churches.
When you don't have
Because I often refer to the farm as something that, a spiritual outreach that it carried to San Francisco that I just haven't seen. I curated this exhibit up there with these 2 Swedish artists that were pretty interesting. And their energy and what they put up, and there's a lot of discussions, you know, the gardeners saying, is this art, you know, art is in the garden, not up here, but it was interesting. I learned a lot.
And the fact that you could have a multi-use space with farm animals and go from punk rock and reggae to farm animals, to have an art gallery, to have rental space for the mime troupe, have the mime troupe in there running the farm for one week, a play going on, rehearse upstairs, and then on the weekends you'd have these huge thrash shows.
It just seemed like an evolutionary process, and that was the real beauty of the farm, is that there was room for projects to grow and sort of twine about one another, so that, I mean, there could be rock and roll downstairs, and there was art in a gallery upstairs, and nursery school kids in the basement, and all those things seemingly unrelated, but they meshed pretty well, I thought. And it was interesting that there was a spot where all those things were going on, so that there constantly were people from a lot of different sensibilities moving around one another and experiencing one another, really. You know, if the nursery school was just in a nursery school, those kids wouldn't have necessarily visited an art gallery. If it was just an art gallery, it wouldn't have necessarily had rock and roll going on simultaneously.
The farm itself was like a plant, like a flower that grew in that.
But
Over the roar of traffic, you can sometimes hear the unlikely crowing of a rooster here.
Now you need a rooster.
The rooster, some chickens, and 2 goats are all that's left of a menagerie of 60 barnyard animals, and today even they are being farmed out to new homes.
The chickens are going up to Siskiyou County tonight. Goats are going out to Calaveras County. They're finding farms, and it'll be good for them, but it's going to be a loss for San Francisco's children.
And today, some of those children had a hard time letting go.
And I really like it here because, you know, like the animals are, I'm real close to the animals. Because I like animals more than people usually, because they don't like say a bad word to you or anything.
For 14 years now, youngsters like Mark have come to this urban farm, a chance for an inner-city kid to learn about the country. But the farm is being evicted now, and the children are losing what some say is a second home.
His playgroup used to come here every couple weeks, and he really likes seeing the animals, and so I need to give him some kind of transition to explain that's not going to be here anymore.
But the farm's more than just animals. It's a haven for artists and musicians, a theater, a rehearsal studio. But that's all over now. The reason for the eviction, as in most landlord-tenant disputes, depends on who you talk to. Suffice it to say, the tenants are behind on the rent. Whatever the reasons, the results are the same.
It won't be the same without, you know, without it.
Well, the community center's over, but the community's still here, so hopefully we can at least stay friends with everybody. I mean, I'm very sad, to tell you the truth.
The landlord's son told me tonight his mother is not opposed to renting at fair market value the space here to another non-profit community group, as long as members of the farm are not involved. Meanwhile, members of the farm say they just hope that there'll be another farm-like structure like this someday, somewhere in the city. But tomorrow morning, the sheriff's department will arrive here and change the locks, and the farm will be no more.
You know, that they... It was a very sad lesson because it was one of, to me, one of the real losses. We lost. We can't say we won. You know, we have glorious memories out of it, wonderful memories out of it. But the fact is that it could be stepped on, it could be taken away.
You know, sometimes I think people look back at the farm and it's something that was lost, but you know, it wasn't completely lost, and for me, certainly the memories are, you know, the best memories of my life, really. And
to re-meet you and now hear the struggles that you went through to put that together for us, to hear the work and the love and dedication that were involved in that gives hope.
Yeah. It was there at the farm that Jack, Bonnie, we all as a community took on this kind of foreign space and said, here, we will make a theater here, we will have a school here, on the edge of the freeway.
I felt that what Bonnie was doing was very honest and sincere, and she had a very clear vision of what she wanted.
It's the connection with the earth that I miss, and with kids who are in a nonviolent space, and they're not.
We can grow corn and potatoes, onions and garlic, Swiss chard, lettuce, cabbage, cucumbers, and all kinds of squashes.
And of course, the other legacy of the farm is the fact that a park did get made where there had just been this flat concrete old parking lot, remnants of an old dairy. And you go there now and you see this 4.5-acre park where there's still people gardening. And
I'm 88 now.
It's really important for us as artists, activists, people interested in community, to have a lineage, to have something to look back to and go, these people did this, we can do this, this is something to learn from. I learn from that now, you know, working with
the life that existed there, the thing that we had there no longer exists. No. And there's nothing really to replace it. Now, and then, you know, I find myself doing the same thing now. Just, you know,
different color sheets.
So I think the legacy of the farm was the whole cooperative spirit of what we were doing, and I think that that was the great thing about it, and the fact that you could have...
It was the collective unconscious coming together with a sense of community. This is also at that time...
Right now, it's like, when I think about it, it's just like, it's really fond memories, you know? It's just like, I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know? I thought it was a really brilliant concept, a conceptual piece that was amazing.
To me, the farm was a very magical place. You know, I have a hard time believing it even existed.
Well, I think there's a piece of me that's buried there, and for me, it really does have to do with that place. And that place is where the water comes together, and it's a down place, and it's very funky and very organic. And I kind of left that part of me there, and then I went on to...
At the right moment, at the right space. You know, I had no idea I was going to be doing a farm when I was going to meetings about the Opera House, you know, but in looking for spaces, that was definitely an available space. And you say the legacy, like even now, the buildings are artist living workspace, and we set that up, and that's fine, you know, artists need spaces, and you know, maybe we need a place a little further out, but one of the advantages that space did have, that it was close to a lot of communities. Kids could walk to it. And we had tons of kids that would walk to it on the little mark, and, you know, that people did take advantage of. We were always open.
Well, I miss the farm.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Brandon.
So, anything else, Jack? I think that's...
I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
We got it.
That's it.
But,
We've
you
got
know,
enough.
I remember Walter.
Science takes flight at last for human goals. This new age builds a better kind of city, close to the soil once more, as molded to our human wants as planes are shaped for speed. New cities take form, green cities. They're built into the countryside. They're ringed with trees and fields and gardens. New cities are not allowed to grow and overcrowd beyond the size that makes them fit for living in. The new city is organized to make cooperation possible between machines and men and nature. Each has his place. The sun and air and open green are part of the design. Safe streets and quiet neighborhoods are not just matters of good luck. They're built into the pattern and built to stay there. Power flashes from pitheads or rapid streams across the region. It flows from powerhouses to the sunlit factories and laboratories. Here science serves the worker and the work together, making machines more automatic and the men who govern them more human. Factories are set apart from living quarters, but close to rail and motor roads, with space to spread about in. Light industries are near at hand. The heavy ones are set apart. People can even walk to work and have their lunch at home sometimes, just like the kids. This is no suburb where the lucky people play at living in the country. This kind of city spells cooperation, wherever doing things together means cheapness or efficiency or better living. Each house is grouped with other houses close to the school, meeting hall, the movies, and the markets. Around these green communities, a belt of public land preserves their shape forever. The children need the earth for playing and growing. Bringing the city into the country. Bringing the parks and gardens back into the city. Never letting cities grow too big to manage. Never pushing the meadows, fields, and woods too far away. This works as well for modern living as once it did in old New England towns. decent kind of life. We fathers have a little time to watch our kids and play with them. They see us in the daytime. The people who laid out this place didn't forget that air and sun are what we need for growing, whether it's flowers or babies. Just watch us grow. The scales won't hold us soon. You can't tell where the playing ends and where the work begins. We mix them here. We learn by living. Playgrounds, schools, libraries are meant for everyone. Even the washing needn't break a woman's back. Machines can take it. And the wife needn't feel cooped up and lonely on washing day. A little gossip or a friendly hand is good for the complexion. The daily marketing's part of the fun. In fact, the market's just an annex to the kitchen. Another chance to chat about the children's measles or the weather, or some new wrinkle in the diet that Grandma never knew. One thing is sure. Most of the greens brought in by truck from nearby farms each morning are fresh and crisp and haven't lost their flavor or their youth. In this new scheme of things, the school becomes the center and the focus of activities. Here, boys and girls live and relive the life around them, getting the measure of our bigger world and shaping it anew. City and school and land, in active partnership, provide the raw materials for life and growth. Here, boys and girls achieve a balanced personality, ready to build and meet a many-sided world, facing the good and bad, choosing the best. Or have we vision? Have we courage? Shall we build and rebuild our cities, clean again, close to the earth, open to the sky? Can we afford a house, a neighborhood, a city as good as this for everyone? Maybe the question is, can we afford all this disorder? The hospitals, the jails, reformatories, the wasted years of childhood. These are future citizens, voters, lawmakers, mothers, fathers. You take your choice. Each one is real, each one is possible. Order has come, order and life together. We've got the skill, we've found the way. We've built the cities. All that we know about machines and soils and raw materials and human ways of living is waiting. We can reproduce the pattern and better it 1,000 times. It's here, the new city, ready to serve a better age. You and your children, the choice is yours.
In every corner of the world, we are being pressured by a monoculture, a global consumer monoculture. It is being pushed by our governments who have a blind idea of growth and development. We're trying to create an alliance, an international alliance for localization, because we need a united no one giant no to a continuation of that system. And at the same time, we need to see ourselves as actually part of an enormous movement involving hundreds of millions of people that are saying many yeses to diverse ecosystems, diverse cultures, diverse identities.